I was always the type of person who thought I had everything under control. I woke up early, planned my day, and made sure everything fell into place. But that morning, everything changed. I hadn't expected it, but it was all too much. It was like a bomb going off in the middle of my routine, throwing me off balance in ways I couldn't control. I should have known it was going to be one of those days. I'd woken up late and immediately things felt off. The kids were already running around the house like mad, trying to get ready for school. I was trying to get the coffee brewing, but the machine malfunctioned for no reason. I couldn't find my shoes, of all things. The phone was ringing nonstop. My work, my family, everyone needed something, and all I wanted was a moment to breathe. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking. "Here goes nothing," I muttered under my breath as I answered the call. "Good morning, Emily. We need your signature on the contract ASAP. Can you get it to me now?" My assistant's voice sounded urgent, like it had become a matter of life or death. Okay, I'll get it done," I said, already feeling the pressure mounting. I didn't have time for this. I needed to find my shoes, I needed to get the kids ready, and I had a presentation in 2 hours. And of course, that's when Josh, my husband, walked in, looking completely unfazed. "Hey babe, can you make me an omelet with bacon, egg, cheese, and tomato?" I looked at him, incredulous. "Are you serious right now? We don't have time for this. I'm running late, everyone's running late." I was already in full crisis mode. I glanced around at the kitchen, the chaos surrounding me, and my mind started to spiral. Waffles? Pancakes? No. Waffles. Or was it pancakes? I was about to lose my mind when Josh just casually walked out the door. "I'll just grab something on the way. You're right," he called back. I couldn't even respond. Not only was I trying to get everything ready for work, I had to keep everything together at home too. The kids, the house, the bills, it was all a blur of noise and responsibilities. I quickly scribbled my signature on the contract and shoved it into my bag. "We're done," I muttered, and took a deep breath. The phone rang again and I picked it up. "Your calendar's filled, Emily. You have 4 calls before your meeting with the marketing team at Anderson Company, and then a sit-down with the VPs. Don't forget, you still have 1 more call before dinner." Dinner? What dinner? The last thing I could think of was food. And dinner with anyone? I couldn't even fathom it. I didn't have time for a dinner meeting, and I definitely didn't have time to think about what I would eat tonight. "Don't put anything else on my schedule unless you check with me first," I snapped at my assistant before hanging up. I had to focus. I had to get out the door. I quickly threw on the first thing I could find, barely paying attention to what I was wearing. I had no choice. The kids needed to get to school, Josh had to go to work, and I had to be at my meeting. As I grabbed my things, I made my way out the door, rushing to the car. At that moment, I could feel the tension in my shoulders, like the weight of the world was sitting on top of me. The traffic was already piling up when I got into the car. I stared at the dashboard, wondering how in the world my life had come to this. Everything I'd worked so hard for, the career, the family, was slipping out of my control, one small moment at a time. I was exhausted, frustrated, and overwhelmed. I barely made it to my meeting on time. My mind was still racing, but I forced myself to focus. Sitting in that room with the marketing team from Anderson Company, I tried to be present, to listen and offer insights. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking about everything else. The kids, the laundry, the bills that I hadn't paid yet. It wasn't until the meeting with the VPs that I realized just how badly I had lost control. They were pushing me for answers I didn't have. They were asking me for things I hadn't prepared. I felt like I was about to crack under the pressure, and then, just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Josh. "The car keys are missing. We're late for the kids' dentist appointment." I froze, the blood drained from my face. It was like everything was falling apart at once. Later that afternoon, I finally had a break. I walked into a restaurant to meet Mia, my old friend from college, for lunch. I had been looking forward to this all morning. Mia was the type of person who had everything together. She was organized, calm, and lived a life that seemed effortless. She smiled when she saw me walk in. "Reservation for Mia?" I nodded. "I'm so sorry I'm late," I said, trying to regain some composure. "No worries," she said, guiding me to the table. "We were about to give your reservation away, but I'm glad you're here." We sat down, and I immediately felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. "How's your day been?" Mia asked, settling into her chair. I couldn't hide my exhaustion. "Busy. You don't know what busy is until you've worked in my office. It's cutthroat." Mia raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "I can't even imagine. You're always on top of things. You make it seem easy." "I don't know how easy it is," I sighed. "I cut coupons. I keep a strict budget just to keep food on the table. But even that isn't enough sometimes. I tried to work from home part-time, but it's a joke. The kids need me, my husband needs me, everyone needs something all the time. There's no time for me." Mia listened intently, nodding in understanding. "I get it," she said softly. But don't you want a break? I leaned back, letting the weight of her question hang in the air. I'd love one, but I can't afford it. I have to make sure everything works or everything falls apart. We continued talking, and it wasn't long before Mia offered something that caught me off guard. You know, if you ever need help, I can always connect you with people who might make things easier. I smiled weakly. I appreciated her kindness, but the idea of asking for help made me feel like I was admitting failure. The rest of lunch with Mia passed in a blur. I could feel her concern for me, but it didn't change the fact that I was still drowning in a sea of responsibilities. After we finished eating, I thanked her, but I could feel the distance growing between us, like her perfect, controlled life and my chaotic one were miles apart. I got in my car, the engine revving to life as I stared at the road ahead, unsure of where I was going, literally and metaphorically. My head was spinning with the endless tasks that awaited me when I got home. Laundry, bills, the kids' endless school projects, and I still hadn't had time to really think about the pitch I had to prepare for tomorrow. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard, 3:30 p.m. I had a meeting in 30 minutes. I wasn't sure how I was going to make it through the day. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment, taking a deep breath before stepping out of the car. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kids weren't home yet, and Josh wasn't back from his meeting. I could almost feel the silence pressing down on me as I entered the house. But the quiet didn't last long. The sound of little feet soon echoed through the halls, followed by the door slamming open. "Mom, I'm home!" Lucy yelled, bounding into the living room. She threw her school bag onto the floor with a loud thud. "Hey, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. "How was school?" "Good, but I forgot my lunchbox," she said, looking up at me expectantly. "Can you bring it to me tomorrow?" I nodded, though I could feel my stomach tightening. Another thing to add to the list. Within minutes, the house was filled with the noise of my two youngest running around, demanding my attention. The pressure was mounting, but I had learned to tune it out, or at least, that's what I told myself. I couldn't afford to crumble. Not now, not when everything was depending on me. The phone rang again. It was Josh. "Hey, I'm stuck in traffic," he said, his voice tense. "The kids need to get ready for their dentist appointment. I can't be late for this one. Can you handle it?" I was so tired of carrying the weight of everything. I gritted my teeth, already exhausted. "Sure, I'll take care of it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thanks," Josh said, but I could hear the faint hint of frustration in his tone. Maybe he was frustrated with the situation, or maybe it was me. Either way, the call ended and I was left with more to juggle. It felt like every moment of my life was a race against time. Between the kids and Josh's endless requests, I was constantly on the edge, barely holding it together. I got to the dentist's office just in time, but my nerves were shot. I looked at my phone, 2 missed calls from work. I had to switch into professional mode, but inside I felt like I was falling apart. I could hear the familiar voice of the receptionist calling my name. "Emily?" "Yeah," I said, standing up, trying to shake off the sense of overwhelm. Finally, after everything, I was back at home, staring at the same pile of work I had left earlier. I hadn't even started on the pitch, and the kids were bouncing around, asking for my attention again. I could feel the cracks beginning to form, but I didn't let anyone see it. I picked up my phone, glancing through the messages. There was a text from Mia. "I know you're busy, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here." I hesitated. There was so much I wanted to say, but I didn't have the energy to open up. Mia seemed to have it all figured out. Her life was clean, organized, simple. But it was only simple because she didn't have the weight of everything I was carrying. I sat back, staring at the mess that was my life. There was no way out, and yet I couldn't stop. I couldn't afford to stop. But sometimes, in the quietest moments, I wondered what it would be like to just let go. Josh finally came to bed, his footsteps heavy on the floor. I could feel his frustration from earlier lingering in the air. "Hey," he said softly, as he climbed into bed. "I know you're doing your best, but we need to talk about the kids. You've been so caught up in work lately, and they need more from you." His words hit me hard. I wasn't sure if he understood just how much I was trying to do. Did he see the weight I carried every single day? "I know, Josh," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm trying, I really am. I just don't know how much longer I can keep this up," he said quietly. "You can't keep putting everything on yourself. You're breaking down, Emily." I turned away, hiding the tears that threatened to spill. I didn't want him to see how close I was to the edge. I didn't sleep much that night. The words Josh had said to me echoed in my mind, spinning in circles. "You're breaking down, Emily." The truth in that sentence was more painful than I wanted to admit. I was falling apart, and I didn't know how to put the pieces back together. My life felt like it was split into a million different directions, and I was being pulled in every one of them at once. The next morning came too quickly, as it always did. The alarm went off at 6 a.m., but I had barely closed my eyes. I reached out to turn it off, but I didn't get up right away. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, willing myself to find some energy to get through the day. But when the kids burst into the room a few minutes later, all of that was forgotten. "Mom, we're hungry!" Lucy shouted, jumping onto the bed with her usual energy. She never seemed to slow down, and I wondered how she could be so full of life when I felt like I was running on empty. "I'm coming," I muttered, rolling out of bed and forcing a smile onto my face. There was no room for weakness today. There never was. I had to be the mom, the wife, the professional. If I didn't do it, no one else would. The morning chaos continued as expected. Josh was already up and making breakfast, but his mood was tense, just like mine. I could tell he wasn't happy, and I wasn't happy either, but we both pretended everything was fine. As I got the kids dressed, I glanced at the clock. 7:30 a.m. I needed to leave in 15 minutes for the first of 4 meetings today. I couldn't afford to be late, and yet everything about the morning screamed that I would be. The kids were fighting over what to wear, the baby was crying for no reason, and Josh was in his own world, still focused on his phone, not really noticing the chaos unfolding around him. "Josh, can you please help me with this?" I snapped, holding up Lucy's shirt. He barely glanced up from his phone. "I'm working on something important right now." I didn't respond, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew there was no point. The truth was, I was used to doing it all myself. I had to. I rushed out the door, barely getting the kids in the car. The ride to the office was quiet, except for the occasional whine from the baby. I was already running late, and the constant pressure of being behind schedule started to weigh on me. I needed a break. I needed someone to tell me that everything would be okay, but no one was going to do that. By the time I got to the office, my nerves were shot. I had meetings stacked up back to back, and there was no room for error. I walked into the building, trying to pull myself together. I could feel the weight of everyone's expectations on me, the clients, the bosses, even my team. I couldn't fail. My assistant greeted me as soon as I walked in. "You've got back-to-back meetings today," she said, already holding my schedule. "The marketing team is waiting for you in conference room A." I nodded, though I could feel my pulse quicken. "Thanks," I replied, quickly moving toward the conference room. The marketing meeting started off fine, but it quickly turned into a disaster. The team was behind on deliverables, and the presentation I had spent hours preparing was suddenly irrelevant. My mind kept wandering to everything I was juggling outside of work. I couldn't focus, couldn't concentrate. I felt my chest tightening as the minutes ticked by, and I was afraid I might crack right there in front of my colleagues. "So, Emily, what do you suggest?" the head of the marketing team asked, looking at me expectantly. I stared at the screen, trying to find the right words, but they wouldn't come. I think we need to reassess our approach," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "We need to focus on what's most important and not let the little things get in the way." It was a weak answer, and I knew it. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, silently judging me for not having the answers. The meeting dragged on for what felt like hours. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control, not just in the meeting, but in my life. I wasn't prepared for any of this. I wasn't ready to be the perfect employee, the perfect mom, the perfect wife, but I had to keep trying. By the time I got home, the house was in chaos again. The kids were fighting over something as usual, and Josh was already sitting on the couch, his face buried in his phone. "Dinner's on the table," I said, my voice tired. "Kids, come eat." "Not hungry," Lucy grumbled, walking past me. "Lucy!" I snapped, a rare break in my patience. "Get over here and eat. I'm not going to chase you down." The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel it in the air, the frustration, the exhaustion. I wanted to sit down, to cry, to scream, but I couldn't. I had to be strong. I couldn't let anyone see how much I was struggling. I couldn't let them know how close I was to falling apart. Josh looked at me, his eyes narrowed. "We need to talk about the kids. They need more of you." I felt my stomach churn at his words. More of you. How much more could I give? The tension in the house was unbearable. I could feel the weight of the unspoken words hanging between Josh and me. The kids had finally eaten and gone to bed, but the silence was deafening. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. My patience had run out, and I knew it was time for us to have the conversation that had been long overdue. I stood up from the kitchen table, where we had both been sitting in silence, nursing our half-finished dinner. "Josh, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm but shaky. I couldn't hold back anymore. He didn't look up from his phone immediately. "About what?" he muttered, still distracted. I took a deep breath and walked over to him, setting my hands on the edge of the table. "About the kids, about us, about everything." He looked up then, his expression guarded. What about it? We're doing fine. No, I said, shaking my head. We're not doing fine. I'm doing everything. I'm handling the kids, the bills, the housework, my job. Everything. And you're not carrying your weight. You need to step up, Josh. His eyes narrowed, and for the first time tonight, I saw a flicker of anger in his gaze. I'm working, Emily. I'm doing my part. You can't expect me to do it all, too. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart pounded in my chest as I leaned forward, my voice rising slightly. You think because you're working, that's it? That's your contribution? What about the kids? What about them? What do you mean? He snapped, his tone defensive. Do you even know what it's like to be with them all day? I demanded. I'm the one who's cleaning up after them, making sure they eat, get dressed, get to school, and when I get home I still have to deal with the mess, the noise, and... I stopped myself, taking a shaky breath. And I can't keep doing it all alone. The kids need both of us. This is a partnership, a team, Josh, and right now I'm carrying all the weight of this family. There was a long pause, the tension thickening in the air. Josh looked down, and I could tell he was processing my words. For the first time, he seemed to recognize the burden I had been carrying, but instead of apologizing, his voice was tight, almost resentful. I didn't realize you felt this way, he said quietly. I thought I was doing my part. Your part? I asked incredulously. When was the last time you picked up the slack? When did you take charge of the kids? When did you manage the bills? I'm drowning in this, Josh, and I can't do it by myself anymore. The room was silent for a moment. I could hear the steady ticking of the clock on the wall, each second a reminder of how much time I had spent silently accepting everything. I never wanted to leave everything on you, he said finally, his voice softer. I know I haven't been the best partner. I've been distracted, and I know I've let you down. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to break down and cry. Part of me wanted to shout at him for not seeing it sooner. But the biggest part of me just wanted to hear him say something different, something that would make me feel like he truly understood the weight I was carrying. I'm tired, Josh, I said, my voice trembling now. I'm tired of doing it all. I can't keep being the only one who is responsible for this family. You have to step up. It's not just my responsibility to raise our kids, to take care of everything. This is our family. It's your responsibility too. He didn't answer right away, but the look in his eyes was enough to tell me that my words had hit him. For the first time in a long time, I felt like he was actually hearing me, like he was understanding the depth of what I was going through. I'm sorry, Josh said quietly, standing up from the table. You're right. I've been selfish. I should have been there for you more, and I will be, I promise. I didn't know if I could fully believe him yet, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. That maybe, just maybe, things could change. I need you to do more than just say sorry, Josh, I said, my voice softer now. I need you to show it, every day, because I can't keep living like this. I can't keep carrying this weight alone. It's not just your job to provide financially. You need to be here, for us, for the kids, for me. He nodded, looking at me with a newfound understanding. I will, I promise. I wasn't sure if I fully believed him yet, but I wanted to. I wanted to believe that things could get better, that we could finally be partners in this. But in the back of my mind, I knew that actions spoke louder than words. I needed to see the change before I could trust that it would stick. I need help with the kids in the mornings, I said, my voice firm. You're not just a bystander in this family. I need you to be present. I need you to be involved. I will. I'll start tomorrow, he said, his voice steady. The next morning, something felt different. I woke up earlier than usual, and instead of the usual chaos, Josh was already up and making breakfast. He was actively helping with the kids, getting them dressed, and making sure they were ready for school. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The atmosphere in the house was lighter, as if we were slowly finding our rhythm again. I didn't have to do everything myself, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were truly working together as a team. As the kids sat down to eat breakfast, I caught Josh's eye across the room. He gave me a small smile, and I could see the sincerity in his expression. It wasn't perfect, but we had taken the first step, and for the first time in a while, I felt like things were moving in the right direction. The days that followed felt like a breath of fresh air. Things didn't magically fall into place overnight, but slowly, with Josh's newfound commitment to being an equal partner, I began to feel like I was getting back some of the control I had lost. There was still a long way to go, but the difference was undeniable. Josh started waking up earlier to help with the kids. He didn't just make breakfast. He helped Lucy pick out her clothes, got the baby dressed, and even made sure they all got to school on time. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was no longer drowning in a sea of responsibility, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. One evening, after the kids were in bed, we sat down together on the couch, catching our breath after the whirlwind of the day. "I can't believe how different things feel," I said, leaning back against the cushions. I wasn't used to having time to just sit, to be present in the moment. For so long, I had been running from one thing to the next, never stopping to enjoy the quiet moments. Josh looked over at me, his expression serious. "I should have been more present before. I can see how much you've been carrying, and I'm sorry for not stepping up sooner. I'm going to keep doing better. You don't have to do this alone." I nodded, feeling the sincerity in his words. It wasn't just about what he said anymore, it was about what he was doing. The small, everyday actions spoke louder than any apology ever could. At work, things also started to feel more manageable. With Josh taking on more responsibility at home, I could focus more on my career. I found myself being more organized, more confident in meetings, and more productive than I had been in months. I could finally breathe again without feeling like I was sacrificing everything else in my life. I walked into my office that morning, greeted by my assistant. "Good morning, Emily. You have a presentation with the Anderson marketing team in an hour," she said, her voice businesslike but with a note of friendliness. "Got it. I'll be ready," I replied, settling into my chair and pulling up my notes for the meeting. I wasn't as anxious as I had been in the past. I had my life under control again, at least for the most part, and it felt amazing. The meeting with the Anderson team went smoothly. I presented the marketing strategy with confidence, and for once it felt like I was actually enjoying my work instead of feeling overwhelmed by it. I spoke clearly, answered questions with ease, and even impressed the clients with my ideas. As the meeting wrapped up, I could see the positive reactions in the room. They were nodding, smiling, and looking at each other like they were ready to sign off on the plan. "Great job, Emily," one of the marketing executives said as we finished. "We're looking forward to moving forward with this." I felt a rush of pride. This was what it was supposed to feel like, working hard, making an impact, and still having time for the things that mattered. When I got home that evening, I walked into the smell of dinner cooking. Josh was at the stove, flipping pancakes. The kids were seated at the table, chattering away about their day. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The kitchen was calm, the kids were happy, the house was organized. This wasn't just a fleeting moment, this was my life now, and I was finally able to enjoy it. "Hey, look who's home," Josh said with a smile as I walked in. I couldn't help but smile back. "Smells amazing. What's for dinner?" "Pancakes and bacon, just like you like it." "I'm impressed," I said, sitting down at the table. The kids immediately bombarded me with stories of their day, their excitement filling the room. I felt like I was finally getting my life back together. The whirlwind of the past few months, work, family, stress, frustration, was slowly starting to settle into something manageable. We had our routine now, and I was no longer carrying it all by myself. I didn't have to do it all alone. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Josh and I sat on the couch together, relaxing after a long day. "You've really changed," I said softly, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I'm trying," he replied, his voice quiet but steady. "I didn't realize how much I was letting you carry. I'm glad I could finally step up. You've been amazing through all of this, and I want to make sure I do my part." I looked up at him, my heart full. "Thank you. I needed this. Needed you to be here, really here with me." Josh smiled, kissing the top of my head. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere."